starting with 9 Souls. Now, I'm not really big into Metroidvanias or 2D action platformers. In fact, the only reason 9 Souls caught my attention was because of my experience with Hollow Knight. That game changed my entire take on this genre. But the moment I laid my eyes on 9 Souls combat, I was instantly sold. This game has perfectly recreated the epic soul-like experience of Sekiro in a way that just draws you in and doesn't let go. For someone who has played Sekiro, you can expect the same brutal gameplay, but it's all wrapped up in this gorgeous world that feels like a homage to Hollow Knight. Honestly, I wouldn't say 9 Souls is underrated, but it definitely hasn't gotten the recognition it deserves. So if you are someone like me who's waiting for Hollow Knight's sequel, I highly recommend you give this one a shot first. 2. Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. While we are still on the topic of Metroidvanias, I think it's only fair that we talk about Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. This game was a total surprise from Ubisoft, and even though it hasn't really caught the attention of the masses, this game easily offers one of the Metroidvania experiences out there. To be honest, I have lately been burned out with Ubisoft games, and I was reluctant to spend any money on them. But nostalgia got the better of me, and I am glad it did. Firstly, this game gets the basic elements right. The platforming feels fluid, with responsive controls and smooth animations. And then it combines that with top-tier combat that's fast-paced and super fun. But when you are not busy fighting the enemies, you have plenty of clever puzzles to solve and side quests to keep you busy. It's a win in my book for Ubisoft, and believe me, they desperately need one right now. 3. Banishers Ghost of New Eden. Then we have Banishers Ghost of New Eden, one of my favorite games on this list, and it's criminally underrated. The first time I dove into this game, I wasn't expecting much, because I thought this game was trying to compete with some of the legendary titles like Witcher 3 and God of War, which made me critical about the whole experience. But just a couple of hours into it, made me realize that it wasn't trying to compete, but to bring the best parts of these legendary games into one package. Firstly, the game absolutely nails the world building. I can't emphasize just how varied and diverse the whole environment is. You can go hours taking on the side quests, which, to be honest, are just as amazing as the main quest itself. And then there's combat, which kept getting more and more interesting the further I went into the game as you unlocked new skills, upgraded weapons, and played around with different gear. The character development could have been better, which consequently affected those moral choices that I had to make, which didn't really matter as much, but it was there. Overall, it's a game you wouldn't want to skip. 4. Lorelie and the Laser Eyes. There's a pretty good chance this is the first time you're hearing about Lorelie and the Laser Eyes, and I don't blame you. I didn't know about it either, until some random guy on Reddit told me about it. But man, this game is good, and I am talking about Portal level good. At first glance, it looks like just another indie game, but it's got some serious depth to it and puzzles that will have you scratching your head. You constantly find yourself trying to solve mysteries that make you feel dumb, but when you do solve them, it's the most satisfying feeling ever for a puzzle lover. However, that requires a lot of reading into books and going over the same clues until everything just clicks into place. This should be enough to tell you this game isn't for everyone. You've got to be very patient and equally observant to get through the tougher bits. But when you do, this game will keep you hooked to the very end. 5. Shadows of Doubt. Shadows of Doubt is probably the most innovative game on this list. It's a game where you play as a detective for hire, trying to make a living by solving complex cases across the world. And when I say world, I mean a fully simulated open-world universe with people actually doing their jobs, going about their business, and a whole lot of crimes happening around. Now, you do see some occasional bugs and glitches, but nothing game-breaking. But what really makes this game worth it is the investigation part, which actually makes you feel like a true detective. You will have to watch CCTVs, talk to people, go through others' trash, and even break into houses if that's what the case requires. This has really flown under the radar for literally everyone, but trust me, it's a game you won't regret buying. But before that, if you are enjoying the video so far, leave a like and let me know what you think about this topic. 6. Alone in the Dark next up. Alone in the Dark is a game that got absolutely thrashed by the critics, which pushed a lot of people away from this game. But I think critics tend to be, well, more critical towards horror games because those games have to measure up to certain standards. However, this game deserves more love for the things that it's nailed. At its core, it's a survival horror game inspired by those 90s classics that comes packed with some brilliant puzzles and innovative level design. Now, don't get me wrong, the game has its issues. Some of the puzzles felt repetitive, the combat was mediocre at best, and the dialogues weren't as good. But honestly, I think these things are secondary for a horror game experience, and what really counts? The game does provide terrifying environments with a focus on old decrepit mansions, creative puzzles, and plenty to keep you engaged for hours. 7. Kunitsu Gami, Path of the Goddess. If you are a fan of strategy games and looking for something more refreshing, you have to check out Kunitsu Gami Path of the Goddess. This game combines action-packed battles, strategic gameplay, and deep base-building elements in a way that feels totally unique. In this one, you are tasked with protecting your people from evil monsters invading your villages from mysterious portals. But the way you do it is what makes it interesting. By day, you recruit allies to help defend your village, and when night falls, you step into the actual battleground as a commander, strategically placing soldiers and setting up defenses to take on tougher waves of monsters and bosses. With each passing night, the challenge just ramps up, making every battle more intense. But it doesn't end with that. You have to repair your bases and upgrade what you can, which some people find grindy, but I think adds more to the game's depth. 8. V Rising. Let's talk about V Rising for a while, because that game did everything right and still failed to make it big. I mean, for an action RPG with survival elements, V Rising offers fantastic combat, plenty of customizations with varied skills and abilities, a diverse and rich world filled with detail, and plenty of challenges to satisfy a hardcore survival lover. Coming from someone who's played a lot of zombie survival games, I was impressed by the enemy AI here. They're genuinely challenging opponents, but they don't overwhelm you with sheer numbers. Instead, they keep you on your toes strategically. The main reason V Rising isn't ruling the genre is that once you finish, there's not much else to keep you coming back. So replayability is a major problem here, but for a first-time experience, this game will have you hooked from start to finish. 9. The Thaumaturge, I don't know if I can pronounce it right, but the Thaumaturge is another game that completely flew under the radar for many. It's a narrative-heavy RPG where you, again, play as a detective trying to figure out who murdered your father. But this time around, you've got superpowers that help you investigate the people of this seemingly rich and gorgeous city of 90s Poland. Luckily, this superpower of yours lets you control these gruesome creatures called Salator, absolutely terrifying monsters with their own unique abilities that you can use to extract the truth. I have heard people complain about the game being slow, and I totally agree, but it's deliberate due to its complex plot and brilliantly voiced character dialogues. The combat isn't as bad as people make it out to be, but it's not as fun considering the lack of variety. But overall, it's an experience that stays with you long after you've finished playing. 10. Creatures of Ava. Lastly, I want to talk about Creatures of Ava because no one apparently is. This is probably one of the very few games that you can actually enjoy without experiencing any violence. There's no combat, no weapons, just you and a massive open world full of wilderness and wildlife creatures that need your help. It's kind of like Pokemon, only you are playing as some sort of healer, trying to save the creatures from a rapidly spreading infection. It sounds pretty serious, but when you actually play the game, you will know just how calming it is. Sure, you've got a job to do, creatures to save, obstacles to avoid, and animals to get on your futuristic Noah ship, but more often than not, you will find yourself lost, simply admiring the beauty of this stunningly gorgeous world. For that alone, this game is worth buying. Alright, those are my 10 picks for the most underrated games of 2024. I am pretty sure you guys have yours, so don't forget to drop them down in the comments for the community. And if you guys are looking for more horror games, check out this video where I talk about the scariest games you can play on Halloween night.